You were useful once. Hold on to that, because the thing standing at the end of this story is useful to nobody, including itself. You start on Terra, pulled out of a hab-block gang war, cut open, rebuilt from the inside, and handed to the 12th Legion back when it still answered to the name War Hounds. Nobody recruited you for your judgment. The Legion had one function in the Great Crusade, and everybody understood it. You get dropped onto the part of the war zone that is going badly, you break whatever is holding it together, and you walk back out through the wreckage while somebody else handles the paperwork. Other legions built strategies. You were the thing their strategies pointed at, and you were proud of it. You shaved your head before every assault because it made the blood easier to get off afterward. You had a squad. You had a brother who scratched his kill count into the inside of his gauntlet like a man tracking rainfall, and a sergeant who made you clean your chain axe twice because he could hear grit in the teeth. You had a name. People used it. Remember that part. Then the Emperor found your primarch on a world called Nuceria, and your life stopped being yours. Nuceria kept slaves and fed them to each other in arenas so the people who owned everything would have something to watch. One of those slaves was your primarch, dropped there as an infant and raised on sand. The men who owned him had no idea what he was. They knew he won, and they wanted him to keep winning, so they opened the back of his skull and hammered in a set of crude cortical implants. The butcher's nails. They flood the brain with rage and shut down everything that is not rage, and the pain only lets go when you are killing something. The people who designed that device were not surgeons. They were promoters. Angron won everything they put in front of him. Then he walked out of the pits with every slave who could hold a blade and started burning the cities of the men who had bought him. His army got a name out of it: the Eaters of Cities. Nuceria's forces cornered what was left of them on a mountain ridge, starving, outnumbered with no way down, and he intended to die up there with them. The Emperor came to him the night before the last battle and offered him a legion and a place at his side. Angron refused. He wanted to die with his own. So the Emperor teleported him out anyway, alone, and the Eaters of Cities were killed to the last man and woman on that hillside the next morning without him. He never forgave it. He was never going to. He shut himself in a chamber in a ruined city called Desh'ea, and the officers of your legion went in one at a time to present themselves to their new father, in order of seniority, because that is how the Imperium does things. He killed them. Legion Master Gear went first. At least 7 more senior officers followed him in, one after another, and the Legion kept sending them because the Legion had nothing else to offer. Kharn, captain of the 8th Assault Company, went in after them and came out alive with Angron walking behind him. The War Hounds ceased to exist that day. Your Primarch's slaves had been the Eaters of Cities, and so you would be the Eaters of Worlds. Then he set his terms. Any world the Legion was ordered to take, you took in 31 hours. That is one Nuceria day, the time it took him to win his greatest victory on that planet, and it applied whether the target was a farming colony or a fortress world. Miss the deadline, and the Legion was decimated. 1 in every 10 of your brothers picked out and killed by the other 9, by hand, as a lesson about scheduling. You lived through that more than once. You have stood in a hangar holding a chain axe you cleaned that morning, waiting to learn whether the count fell on you or on the man beside you. Ghenna is where it broke open. The world had accepted imperial compliance years earlier and then gone silent, and when your legion arrived, the negotiations lasted about as long as it took to work out that the Gennans had rebuilt their own bodies and were running their civilization on machine intelligence, which is the one thing the Imperium never forgives. The clock started. 31 hours. They almost broke you. The Gennans came in numbers a legion cannot physically process, and the 31 hours ran out with your brothers still fighting in the streets, and every world eater aboard the Conqueror understood exactly what was coming next. So Galan Surlak finished his work. The Legion's Primus Medicae had spent years trying to reproduce your Primarch's implants in a form that would not simply kill an Astar tease, And on Ghenna, he solved it. Kharn took them first and survived. Then the rest of the Legion queued up. Some of your brothers refused. A centurion named Mago, Terran, one of the old War Hounds, worked out that a legion with those things in its head would stop being a legion, and he took as many Terran-born brothers as would follow and turned on his own primarch on the surface of Ghenna. He was right about everything, and it changed nothing. Mago died. The survivors of his revolt knelt and submitted themselves for judgment, which is what being right earns you in the 12th. Then you killed Ghenna. All of it in a single night, level by level, until there was nothing on that planet with a pulse. Astropaths half a sector away heard it happen. The Emperor censured the Legion formally and ordered the implantation stopped. Angron ignored him. Layman Russ came in person to make the point. The parley collapsed the way anyone could have predicted, and your Primarch beat the Wolf King in single combat and then let himself be surrounded so the Space Wolves could finish him if they had the will. They did not. Nobody ever quite went through with it, because the Great Crusade was behind schedule and you were extremely good at your work. That is the arrangement you live inside. The people holding the weapon keep noticing it is defective. Right up until the moment they need something killed. Combat is relief. The first 30 seconds of a boarding action feel like cold water on a burn. Then the fighting stops, the pressure comes back behind your eyes, and you sit in a troop bay listening to your own implants grind while the brother across from you scrapes his fingers raw on the deck plating for something to do. Standing in a briefing hurts. Holding position hurts. Waiting is a physical injury. And the things eat outward. Memory goes first, in pieces small enough that you never notice the theft. The name of the brother with the kill count on his gauntlet. The color of the sky over your hab-block. The reason you started shaving your head. By the time your own name goes, there's nobody left in your company who used it anyway. When Horus turned, nobody had to work on your Primarch. Horus offered a war with no end to it, and a father worth hating. Angron agreed before the sentence finished, and you went with him, because by then the nails had removed most of the equipment a person uses to disagree. Isstvan Three is where you found out which of your brothers were still loyal to Terra. They were assigned to the surface, told to hold, and then the virus bombs came down on them. Some of them lived through it. So Angron took the rest of the Legion down as a second wave to finish the survivors in person, and you went with him, into a city that was already dead, to kill men you had trained beside for a century, whose only error was staying loyal to the man who built you both. Then, Ultramar. The Shadow Crusade, your Legion and the Word-Bearers turned loose on Gilliman's realm, and it was the closest thing to a good year you will ever have. Worlds with no reinforcements coming. Constant fighting, which meant constant quiet in your skull. On Arma to Ra, the Ultramarines let you into the ruins of their capital and then dropped the buildings on you, and your Primarch had to dig himself out of the rubble with his chain axes chewed down to bare metal. He threw Gorechild away on the spot. Kharn picked it up and still carries it. Then Lorgar took Angron home, and it had nothing to do with sentiment. The Word-Bearers had worked out that the implants were killing him, and Lorgar wanted a Primarch that lasted. On Nuceria, your Primarch found out what the locals had made of him in the centuries since. In their version, he was the coward who ran and left his army to die. He gave one order to both legions after that. Kill everything and everyone on the planet. So you did. The arenas, the bloodlines that had owned him, farmers on the far side of the continent who had never seen a gladiator pit. Lorgar drew his ritual across the corpse of a world, and Angron went into it dying and came out with wings, horns, and a rank. Nobody on Terra wanted translated. A demon Primarch. Khorne collected. The nails stopped mattering because there was nothing left in that head for them to grind against. At the Siege of Terra, you were the part of the assault no commander could aim. Horus had siege masters and sorcerers and a plan with stages in it. He also had the 12th, which he used the way you use a hammer on a problem you have decided not to think about. You went up the walls behind something that no longer used your legion's name, or any name, or yours. You had come home, technically. This was the world that recruited you. The hab-blocks, the gang wars, the man who told you the Emperor had a use for boys like you. You went through it wall by wall and felt nothing, and the absence never struck you as strange, then or since. Horus died. The assault collapsed. You ran for the eye with everyone else. Skalathrax is where the Legion ended, and the enemy had almost nothing to do with it. Kharn led you down onto that world to take it off the Emperor's children, and you were winning. Then the night came in. Skalathrax gets cold enough to kill an armored Astartes in minutes. Both sides knew it, and both sides did the sensible thing. Truce until dawn. The Third Legion went into their shelters, your brothers went into theirs, and Kharn stood out in the dark and could not accept that the killing was going to pause for one night. So he took a flamer to your shelters. His own legions. Then he walked off into the freezing dark and kept killing anything he found. Your brothers came out burning into weather that was already lethal, and they fought the Emperor's children and each other over whatever cover was left, because there was nothing else left to do out there. By morning, there was no 12th Legion. There were warbands. Kharn was recovered much later and has been the betrayer ever since. That was 10,000 years ago, and nothing has replaced it. No fortress. No command structure. No muster rolls. No rank to be promoted into. No fleet that answers to anything except whoever is currently winning arguments with an axe. You take a ship because you are standing on it. You take a world because it was in the way. There is a rhythm to it, and the rhythm is the worst part. Planetfall, a few hours of killing, and the pressure in your skull drops to something you can live behind. Then the fighting runs out, then transit, weeks of it, a warband sealed in a hull with nothing to fight and implants that read stillness as punishment. Warbands routinely arrive somewhere smaller than they left. Skulls get collected and counted, and the counting is the closest thing to religion you have left. Khorne accepts them from anyone. Loyalist, traitor, Xenos, civilian. Your own brother who stepped into your swing. That indifference is the only genuinely equal system in the galaxy, and you serve it, because it is the only thing that has ever made sense of the noise in your head. Some of your brothers go further than you did. The Eightbound get chained into a brass sarcophagus, wired straight into their nails, and sent into the warp to fight 8 demons for ownership of their own body. Some of them come back mutated into something the surgeons have to scrape off the floor. The ones who come back standing are host to all 8 for good, still fighting them from the inside, and in the 12th, that counts as promotion. Your primarch is still working. He was banished once and came back, and when an Imperial agent lit an ancient beacon called the Coral Engine above Malakbael, its light reached him across the void and hurt, so he brought a fleet and every Khorne worshipper who would follow and went to put it out. He does not remember Nuceria, he does not remember Desh'ea, or the Ridge, or you. He is an enormous quantity of rage with a name still attached to it, and you followed him the moment you heard, because the nails go quiet when he is on the field. That is the only mercy anyone has offered you in 10,000 years, and it lasts exactly as long as the battle does. So that is your life as a world eater. You were a soldier, then a weapon, then an appetite with legs. Everything that made you a person got traded away in pieces, and every trade bought the same thing. A few more minutes without pain. Blood for the blood. God, skulls for the skull throne. Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows, which sounds almost generous until you follow it all the way down and understand that he has no particular preference about whose skull ends up on the pile either. Yours counts too. Yours always counted. Somewhere on Terra there was a kid who shaved his head before assaults because it made the blood easier to wash off. He would be horrified by you. He would also have been dead for 10,000 years by now, so the timing worked out about as well as anything in the 12th Legion ever does.